Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Que l'on ouvre les portes. Let's open the doors. Statements by members. Déclaration de...
Statements by members.
For York Centre.
Mr. Speaker, this past Monday was International Holocaust Remembrance Day, when we remembered the murder of over 6 million Jews during World War II. This year also marked the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. On Monday, at Auschwitz-Birkenau, I joined the Governor General, a multi-partisan group of MPs, and over 200 Holocaust survivors to mark this solemn day. The memory of the over 1 million Jews murdered there, relived on Monday through the testimonies of those who survived, must never be forgotten. On Monday, survivor Marian Tursky urged the world to adopt an 11th commandment: thou shalt not be indifferent. For their legacy and ours, we must fight against a resurgence of anti-Semitism and xenophobia and ensure that our vow of never again is matched by our commitment to combat anti-Semitism and hatred in all its forms wherever it rears its ugly head. Let's each of us pledge this day and every day to never be indifferent.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Member for Edmonton, Griesbach.
Mr. Speaker, I want to commemorate the victims of the Ukraine International Airlines flight PS 752. 176 innocent people lost their lives when this plane was shot down by the Iranian military. 57 were Canadians. Of those, 13 were Edmontonians. Loved ones of these victims deserve immediate answers. But their grief has been compounded because they're not getting those answers. Instead, they've suffered through a cover-up since day one. Iranian authorities must be transparent and fully cooperate with independent agencies investigating this horrific event. Families also deserve to see that the remains of their loved ones are allowed to be repatriated to Canada as soon as possible. Anything less is completely unacceptable. These loved ones have suffered enough.
Member for Pickering, Uxbridge.
Mr. Speaker, 4 years ago, this House unanimously approved M24, designating January as Tamil Heritage Month. Tamil Canadians have had a significant impact on the fabric of our society. Canada has been strengthened by the contributions of over 300,000 Tamil Canadians living in every province and territory across this country. In my community, organizations like the Durham Tamil Association and the Tamil Cultural and Academic Society of Durham advocate tirelessly on behalf of the Tamil community with their continued fight for justice, accountability, and reconciliation. January is also the month Tamil Canadians celebrate the Harvest Festival, Thai Pongal, a time for friends and family to gather and celebrate a generous harvest. I'd like to thank my friend, the member from Scarborough Rouge Park, for introducing M24 and advocating for this important recognition. Happy Tamil Heritage Month.
Here, here.
The Honourable Member for Shefford. Mr. Speaker, 3 years ago today, January 29th, 2017, our national capital and the entire province of Quebec was faced with that unforgettable tragedy. We were surprised to see an individual gun down many of our fellow citizens who were at the main mosque in Quebec praying. 6 persons were deceased and 19 others were injured, and many families still live with the consequences of this attack. 3 years later, we are stand in solidarity with members of the Muslim community. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I would like to offer families and victims and the entire Muslim community in Quebec our support and our cooperation. each of us should be able to practice their religion freely, safely, and with dignity. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, today we remember that 3 years ago today, a man entered the main mosque in Quebec City, murdered 6 innocent Canadians, injured 19 others, and forever changed the lives of many families just because they were Muslim. Today, we commemorate the lives of victims of this terrorist attack, including that of Azzedine Soufiane, who is considered a hero by his community for having saved several lives by running towards the shooter in an attempt to stop him.
Speaker, is that it hits so close to home, that it happened in my home province of Quebec, that it happened to Canadians. An attack on one Canadian is an attack on all Canadians.
These victims chose Canada because of the possibilities it offers for a better and more peaceful life. We all have to work together to build a better world where everyone feels safe, regardless of their race, religion, or origin. Islamophobia and all hate crimes have no place in Canada. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, it's with great pride that I represent all the citizens of Louis Saint-Laurent here at the House of Commons. I would like to point out 2 of them who have recently received awards. First, on November 25th, I awarded Patrice Cardin the Medal of Sacrifice. Mr. Cardin served with honor and dignity in the armed forces, and he was also involved in the cadets as a volunteer. He supported soldiers dealing with PTSD. Also, a week ago, Jean-Philippe Paillet, a professor at the Odyssée Val-Belair School, was awarded the Governor General's History Award for excellence in teaching. He knows how to capture the attention of his students with new technologies and launched a traveling exhibition project with the Huron-Wendat Nation. He was given this award by Her Excellency, the Right Honourable Julie Payette. We are very proud of the people of Louis Saint-Laurent.
Valley West.
Mr. Speaker, on January the 8th, traveling back to Canada after spending time with her family in Iran, Maya Zubayd tragically died, along with 175 others, when flight PS 752 was shot down out of the skies over Tehran. Maya was a grade 10 student at Northern Secondary School in Don Valley West. Maya était brillante.
Maya was bright, ambitious, and was always ready to help those around her.
A learner who quickly moved from ESL classes to grade 10 English while helping her friends with their academic work. Maya
was looking forward to attending university in a few years and often discussed her future with everyone. Her teachers and friends describe her as a kind, happy, compassionate person and as someone who was always had a smile on her face.
Secondary school have lost a wonderful neighbor, friend, and student. This tragedy has gripped all of us in our entire country. Our thoughts are with Maya, her family, friends, and Northern Secondary School. She will be greatly missed.
The Honourable Member for Parkdale High Park.
Mr. Speaker, this weekend I was at an Ismaili Muslim mosque with my 2 sons. As I struggled to keep my restless sons focused, I realized actually how lucky I was that my biggest challenge that day was quieting my kids. 3 years ago today, Muslim parents in Quebec City were not so lucky. On
January 29, 2017, the parents at the Islamic Cultural Center did not have the opportunity to discipline their children, but rather had to protect them from a terrorist consumed with hate who shot down Muslims during their prayers. And while struggling to protect their children, 6 innocent men lost their lives simply because they were Muslim.
Recognizing this as a murderous Islamophobic act is critical, Mr. Speaker, but equally critical is ensuring that Muslim Canadians, indeed that every Canadian, can feel safe in their place of worship. Those 6 heroes will have died in vain if we do not, as parliamentarians, redouble our efforts to combat the hatred that spawned this act of terror. That is the work I'm committed to do, and I invite every member of this House to join me. Merci beaucoup, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Souris Moose Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to mental health, we need to reduce the stigma and raise awareness. Canadians from coast to coast to coast struggle with mental health issues, and the Bell's Let's Talk campaign has and continues to do incredible work addressing the stigma surrounding it. Talking openly about mental health can be difficult, yet many Canadians from all walks of life are affected. One of the main goals of Bell Let's Talk Day is to open up that conversation without judgment to stigma, while also raising funds for Canadian mental health organizations. The theme of the 2020 campaign, Mental Health, Every Action Counts. Not only is Bell focused on removing the stigma associated with mental health, they also expand their strategy to include supporting world-class research, improving access to care, and leading by example in workplace mental health. With 5 cents being donated to Canadian mental health organizations for every view, I encourage all Canadians to share the Bell Let's Talk Day video on your social media channels or by sending a message through your Bell carrier. Let's join the conversation and help create positive change now and into the future.
The honourable member for Milton.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Off Milton's amazing velodrome facility to the Minister of Canadian Heritage. This was a great reminder that Milton has such a strong culture of active living, something that I hope to highlight as the Parliamentary Secretary for Sport. Recently, the Sherwood Community Centre also opened its doors to the public in Milton. With an amazing library, pool, fitness studio, and 2 rinks, this new community centre is exactly the sort of space that will allow for families and young people to learn, grow, and play. This month, just this month, 2 young athletes, Maddie Schizas and Leah Pereira, who trained at the Milton Skating Club, finished on the podium at the Canadian National Skating Championships. In the spirit of my riding's commitment to active living, I'm happy to announce that on February 2nd between 5 and 7 p.m., I'll be hosting a free skate at that Sherwood Community Centre. I've heard there's a little football game going on that night, but for those who'd rather participate in a sport than watch it, you're welcome to come and join us at Sherwood.
The honourable member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in the House today with a heavy heart to pay tribute to the late Darren McClelland, Fire Chief of my hometown of Swift Current, who passed away on January 20th at the young age of 48, following a 3-year battle with cancer. Darren is survived by his loving wife, Nicole, his daughters, Ashley and Haley, as well as by his parents, Jim and Brenda, brother Derek, and sister Kimbrin. All of us in Swift Current have been incredibly blessed to have had Darren's many years of service, and we are grateful for all he has contributed to our community in his role as a firefighter, deputy, and chief. I would also like to thank the firefighters who voluntarily traveled from Saskatoon and Regina to relieve our crews from their duty, so that every member of the Swift Current Fire Department was able to put their work aside and join with Darren's loved ones in grieving his loss. To Darren, thank you for your faithful service to our community. I have no doubt that your legacy will live on in Swift Current and beyond for years to come.
The honourable member for Caribou, Prince George.
Today is Bell Let's Talk Day, a day where we're all encouraged to talk about mental health. Mental health affects us all. 2 out of 3 people suffer in silence, fearing judgment and rejection, and far too often this leads to suicide. It's on all of us as leaders to break this silence, to build an environment of acceptance and understanding, where those who are suffering silently can come out of the shadows and know that they will be believed, and they know that they're not weak. Mr. Speaker, my best friend committed suicide when I was 14. And since that time, I've attended far too many funerals, sat with far too many families that are left behind to pick up the pieces because of suicide. So on this day, my message to those who are suffering is this: you are not weak. You are loved, and it's okay not to be okay. And our world is a better place because you are in it. And to my colleagues in this House, I urge you to talk about mental health, not just today, but every day. Take a moment to ask these 3 words of a friend, a loved one, a colleague, or even a neighbor: are you okay? And take a moment to listen. You may just save a life.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
3 years ago today, the Quebec Islamic Cultural Centre was the subject of a hateful and Islamophobic crime. An individual was so filled with hate that he entered into a room of prayer and assassinated 6 men and injured many others. It's not a coincidence that this occurred. It is the consequence of a scary rise in white supremacy and acts against Muslims in Canada.
3 years ago, we have seen hatred continue to rise and families of victims continue to struggle. And we have seen political leaders across the globe endorse messages of hate directed towards Muslims.
We know that if hate is not confronted, it spreads like a forest fire. When something injures one of us, it injures all of us. We're all connected. And that is why I am raising this today for the 6 widows and the other children left without fathers, for their courage. So whether it's in our schools, streets, or online, we have to send a clear message. Racism and Islamophobia are not welcome here.
Honorable député de Rimouski-Neigette, Témiscouata-les-Basques.
Mr. Speaker, in Rimouski, we celebrated a banquet that I was able to attend. There is an important maritime training center there, and it is recognized for its facilities, for its innovation, and its participation in maritime technology development. It offers training in naval architecture, navigation, marine mechanical engineering, and professional diving. So I would like to recognize Quebec's Maritime Institute, its personnel, its partners, and all those who make this institution a source of regional pride.
Honourable member for Lanark, Frontenac, and Kingston.
Mr. Speaker, on this sad day, January 29th, is the 3rd anniversary of a terrorist act that is so terrible it is a metaphor for all acts of hatred across the country against religious groups. I'm talking about the attack against the Islamic Cultural Center in St. Foy. 3 years ago today, 6 of our fellow citizens were murdered just because they were Muslim.
29th is a day that will live in infamy. This act of terror was a betrayal of every one of our country's most sacred values: freedom of religion, welcoming newcomers and making them our friends and neighbors and equals, of treating others as they hope that we would be treated by them. To those who feel a pain that can never be healed, except by the infinite compassion of the Almighty, I say, today we all of us on all sides of this House, stand with you.
The honourable member for Pierrefonds-Dollard. 3 years ago today, thousands of Quebecers mourned together the assassination of 6 men and 19 others were injured.
Centre culturel islamique de Québec à Sainte-Foy, only because they were Muslim. Azuddin Sufyan, Ibrahima Bari, Mamadou Tandu Bari, Khalid Balkasami, Abu Bakr Tabdi, Abdul Karim Hassan. This happened 3 years ago, but their families still live without their fathers, brothers, and sons every single day. As a father of 2 young girls who sometimes accompany me to mosque, the fact that I and others have to look behind our backs means we have a lot more work to do. In this House, we wear the green square today in memory of the lives lost. We owe it to the victims to confront hate and Islamophobia wherever we see it, clearly, unequivocally, together. Thank you.
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence in memory of the victims of the attack of the Centre Culturel Islamique de Québec that happened 3 years ago today. J'invite les honorables.
I now invite honourable members to rise.
Oral questions. Question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has said that his government isn't going to worry about economic data points like GDP, and instead they're going to focus on people's feelings. Well, this Prime Minister has a track record of making wealthy CEOs of profitable companies very, very happy. We remember when he gave BlackBerry a grant that their CEO said they didn't even need, $12 million for Loblaws, and now we find out that he's given $50 million of taxpayers' money to MasterCard. Why did the Prime Minister make taxpayers so sad by giving $50 million to a company that made $16 billion off the backs of hardworking Canadians who can't afford to pay their full balances?
Thank you, Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, over the past 5 years, we've been focused on growing the middle class and supporting those working hard to join it. That's exactly what we've done. As we've seen over 1 million new jobs created over the past years, as we've seen almost 1 million Canadians lifted out of poverty, as we've seen investments that have led to better jobs and better outcomes for Canadians right across the country, we're going to keep looking at investing for a better future for Canadians while Conservatives continue to talk about cuts and austerity.
Well, Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I understand that this Prime Minister is having trouble defining who qualifies to be in the middle class. I can assure him that the CEO and the wealthy executives of MasterCard do not fall into that category. This company that got this money, in the government's own press release, says that it is a wholly owned subsidiary of MasterCard Incorporated. MasterCard is a credit card company that makes money off of people who can't afford to pay their full balances. Why did the Prime Minister think that they needed a handout?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we continue to invest in things that are going to create jobs for Canadians and support hard-working families right across the country. We recognize that investing in different sectors of the economy allows us to move forward in a positive way for Canadians. Everything this government does is focused on growing the middle class and helping people working hard to join it, like the tax cut we're moving forward with that is putting more money in the pockets of 20 million Canadians and lifting close to 1 million people off of the federal tax roll. These are the kinds of things that make a difference in people's lives.
I just want to remind the honourable members that the Leader of the Opposition asked a question of the Prime Minister and he wants to hear an answer. So I just want to make sure that he does get something back and he can hear what's being said. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, having a wasteful government that believes in corporate welfare may not quite be priceless. Turns out it's worth $50 million. But if the Prime Minister really wanted to worry about the feelings of Canadians, he can make out-of-work Canadians in the energy sector happy by approving the Tech Frontier mine. This project has gone through all the approvals, and now there are signals that the Prime Minister is waffling on it. Will he show Canadians that he believes in Canada's energy sector, side with those who have lost their jobs, not with the activists and celebrities?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
10 years, Mr. Speaker, Conservatives railing against activists, celebrities, or ordinary Canadians with concerns did not help the energy sector. What has helped the energy sector is a responsible approach that recognizes environmental stewardship, partnership with Indigenous peoples, and moving forward in a thoughtful way towards a lower carbon future is the right path for Canadians. The way we do that needs to be in partnership with all sectors in this country, and that's why we are focusing on making the right decisions for all Canadians, and that's what we will continue to do.
Excellent. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The murder of Marilyn Levesque at the hands of a killer on day parole is as appalling as it was preventable. The media is reporting that parole board commissioners encouraged the killer to seek out sexual services of a woman, and he killed her. That is unacceptable, and an internal investigation is not enough. What is the Prime Minister going to do about this horrible case? Should Canadians understand that this is standard practice by parole officers? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Our sincerest condolences we extend to the family of Ms. Lévesque. This is a tragedy for any family facing this type of situation. The individual has been arrested and is facing accusations. The decision by the parole board is made independent of the government. However, the Commission and Correctional Services is undertaking an inquiry behind the decisions that led to this tragic situation.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter is this individual was convicted of the violent murder of his wife. Now, this Prime Minister has opposed mandatory prison sentences for convicted murderers in the past, but he should never have been released. He should never have been encouraged to seek the services of a sex worker by government officials. She deserved better. Marilyn Lévesque deserved better than this failure. Public safety sets guidelines for parole officers and people involved in parole decisions. Will the Prime Minister confirm that this is not the type of encouragement that is standard practice for individuals released on parole?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
As I said, Mr. Speaker, this was a tragedy, and we offer our support to the family and friends of Marilyn Lévesque. Obviously, decisions of a parole board are independent from government, but we are pleased to see that Correctional Services Canada and the parole board are launching a board of investigation into the circumstances that led to this tragic case. I assure you, Mr. Speaker, all Canadians want answers to this.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that at this point in time, people realize that the Bloc Québécois has sent to the government some potential ideas for coming up with a solution to the problem of aluminum as part of the new NAFTA agreement. Parliament has an opportunity, an extraordinary opportunity, to do the right thing, to make the right choice. And for that, we need to have common communication strategies. So I'll start here, Mr. Speaker. Does the Prime Minister acknowledge that the treatment for aluminum under the new NAFTA agreement is different from that granted to steel? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Under the new NAFTA agreement, Mr. Speaker, we have guarantees for steel and aluminum. 70% of the material used in production of automobiles in North America will use steel and aluminum from North America. In fact, the U.S. had concerns in the past with respect to steel and aluminum. We continue to defend our steel and aluminum sectors here. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to hear that. However, at this point, the agreement has been written, but there are some potential solutions. Unfortunately, at this point, given the current state of situation, the Bloc Québécois will have to vote against the Ways and Means motion. And I hope it's the only time that we will have to vote against it, that we will be able to find reasons that we can vote alongside the government on this treaty. Does the Prime Minister realize that the modernization projects where over $6 billion are in jeopardy because of this agreement? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I would like to say to the Honourable Leader of the Bloc Québécois that there are many reasons to support the new NAFTA agreement. It is good for workers across the country, be they farmers, steel workers or aluminum workers, small and medium businesses, or investors who want to expand in the country, families who depend on business with the United States. There are a number of reasons, many reasons, in fact, to support this agreement that will put in place certainty and opportunities for workers in Quebec and across the country.
Burnaby South.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
By the government, but Canadians are deeply concerned about those who are trapped in the region because of the coronavirus. Now, the U.S. and other countries have negotiated an agreement to secure the evacuation of their citizens. What stage are we at with securing similar negotiations or assurances for Canadians who are trapped in the region? Les gens ont des graves.
People are very concerned with respect to the coronavirus. What is the government's plan to help Canadians come back home? The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
All members in this House take the security and safety of Canadians abroad very seriously. That's why I'm pleased to say that Canadian officials in Ottawa and in China are working closely with their Chinese counterparts. We continue to liaise closely with our international partners on developing options to ensure the safety and health of Canadians in the affected region. Jusqu'à maintenant, nous
To date, we have received 160 requests from Canadians who want to be repatriated. Each Canadian who has contacted us will receive consular services for assistance given the situation, and we will continue to keep people abreast of the next steps.
Merci.
The Liberal government always tries to find a way to earmark money for very rich corporations. We've seen the case of Loblaws. Now it's MasterCard. MasterCard made $9 billion in profits in a year.
Is jumping to give this profitable company $50 million of public money, while they drag their feet to deliver the health care that Canadians need so that they can afford the medication. Why does the Liberal government keep giving money to profitable companies instead of investing in our health care?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, the NDP is choosing to share this erroneous perception that we have not taken real action on moving forward on reducing the cost of prescription drugs for Canadians. We've moved forward in significant ways that have lowered the costs for prescription drugs for Canadians. We've continued to move forward on creating a national drug agency, on moving forward on a strategy for high-cost rare disease medications. We know there is much more to do. We will continue to work with them and everyone in this House to deliver on affordable health care for all Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister first ran for office, he said his fiscal anchor was that the deficit would never exceed $10 billion. Well, now it's reached $27 billion. He said the budget would be balanced in 2019. Now they won't tell us how many decades it will take for that to happen. They said that the debt as a share of GDP would never go up, and this year it is going up. So given that there are at least 3 fiscal anchors that have been detached from the government's fiscal ship, are there any anchors left?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The basic approach that the Liberal government has taken is very different from the approach of Conservatives. We believe that investing in Canadians is the way to grow the economy.
Thank you. Okay, the Right Honourable Prime Minister can continue, please.
Conservatives believe that austerity and cuts are the way to help Canadians. We know that they're wrong because over the past years we have demonstrated that investing in families, investing in communities, not only has seen Canadians create over 1 million jobs over the past few years, but we've reduced poverty by record amounts, seeing almost 1 million Canadians lifted out of poverty, including over 300,000 kids. We're going to continue to invest in Canadians.
Honourable Member for Carleton.
Only we're not getting any value for the money, Mr. Speaker. The reality is that unemployment in Canada is higher than in at least 4 G7 countries, higher than in the UK, the US, Japan, and Germany. It's been above the G7 average for the Prime Minister's entire term. Growth in the US is 50% faster than here in Canada. These deficits are not buying us growth, and they are not buying us any jobs.
Yes.
But back to my original question. The Prime Minister said the debt to GDP ratio would continue to go down. Is he still committed to that, or is he just going to put our future on the MasterCard?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
As Conservatives continue to talk down the Canadian economy, we can understand that Canadians might wonder where we're going. Well, I am happy to reassure them that not only is our plan working to lift Canadians out of poverty and see jobs created, but the international bond rating agencies have unanimously given Canada a AAA rating, the top rating in terms of our fiscal plan for going forward. We are the only other country with Germany in the G7 that has has that top unanimous AAA rating because international agencies knows that our plan is working for Canadians.
The honourable member for Calgary, Rocky Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Middle Class Prosperity has repeatedly failed to answer basic questions about what middle class even means. Right. The Liberals say that they like evidence-based policy, but we know that they like buzzwords even better. Without a definition of the middle class and an estimate of how many Canadians belong to it, nobody can measure their prosperity. Does the Prime Minister think it's important for his Minister of Middle Class Prosperity to know who the middle class are? Maybe he has his own definition.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've continued to invest in the middle class and support them throughout from the very, very beginning of our coming into office. And the member opposite wants to talk about results. We have seen results in over 1 million new jobs being created, in almost 1 million Canadians lifted out of poverty. We have seen investments in public transit, in housing, in approaches that have made a real material difference in the lives of millions of Canadians, because we have chosen to invest in Canadians and their families, unlike the Conservatives who choose cuts and austerity as their only tool in the fiscal toolbox.
The honourable member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, the aluminium sector in Canada is facing competition that doesn't show much concern for labour standards or environmental impacts. The new NAFTA agreement isn't perfect, but solutions that could be put in place quickly have been presented to the government. Aluminium must be at the heart of the Canadian environmental strategy. Today, representatives from Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean have come to Ottawa, and they're expecting a signal from the government along these lines. Will the Prime Minister send a signal that it will remedy the shortcomings in the new NAFTA agreement? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. All Canadians are proud of the aluminium industry in this country. We have innovations. We are international leaders. We've got AP60, ELYSIS, and I have seen with my own two eyes what is being done in the Saguenay region in the aluminium sector. I'm very proud of them and to support these workers and to show them that not only is economic growth important, but so is environmental protection, and that Canada is a leader in both.
Oak Ridge's Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, the importance of the integrated North American economy is not lost on Conservatives. The aluminum, auto, agriculture, and digital sectors have a lot of but many questions, and they remain unanswered. They need to know the upsides and the downsides of this deal. We've asked the Prime Minister to release all NAFTA-related economic studies and analysis so that we, as parliamentarians, can do the job Canadians sent us here to do. When will the Prime Minister release all of the NAFTA-related documents?
Honourable Prime Minister.
We've been working over the past 3 years to ensure continued access for Canadian businesses to the North American market, to ensure the jobs of Canadian workers from coast to coast to coast that rely on a tight and strong trading relationship with the United States. We were pleased that in an era of unpredictability and protectionism from the United States, we were able to secure a great deal for Canadians that has demonstrated that we will be able to be reassured for generations to come on NAFTA. We will continue to work with all parliamentarians to ensure that this moves forward the right way.
Excellent. Prince Albert.
Mr. Speaker, it's been 48 days since we asked for the Liberal government to provide the economic impact analysis of the new NAFTA. There are clearly concerns from a number of key sectors, including dairy and aluminum. We have asked the Prime Minister to provide these documents so we can do our job. When will the Prime Minister provide these documents, or are you trying to hide something?
I just want to remind the honourable members that they're speaking through the Speaker, because honestly, I'm not hiding anything. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Assure the member opposite that the Speaker is certainly not hiding anything. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, that from the very beginning, we offered full briefings and information, not just to the leaders of the opposition parties, but to their critics as well. We will ensure that all information that they require to make the right decision for their constituencies and for Canada is given to them. We know that this is an extremely important achievement for Canada to have secured trade with North America, within the North American market. We will continue to work with all members in this House to ensure that we can move forward properly.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, the regions of Quebec are right to be concerned about aluminum being abandoned in the new NAFTA agreement. If the House agrees later, we will have an opportunity to table an impact study that shows that 6 major projects will be compromised by the lack of protection for Quebec aluminum due to Chinese dumping. Over 10 years, 16 billion in investments are being jeopardized, 60,000 good-paying jobs back home and on the North Shore. Mr. Speaker, did the government know that it would be sacrificing $16 billion in spin-offs for Quebec when it signed this agreement, or did it simply not do its homework? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's a good agreement for all workers in Canada, including workers in the aluminum sector. The aluminum sector is better protected with this agreement than it was in the past. Automobile manufacturers need to use at least 70% aluminum from North America. This is a progressive agreement that will benefit Canadian families. And if he doesn't want to believe my word, he can listen to Jean Simard, the president of the Aluminum Association of Canada, who says that the new NAFTA is the way to go. If he doesn't want to listen to Mr. Simard, he could listen to Premier Legault, who says we need to absolutely ratify this agreement. It's in the interest of Quebec. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Simard also said that he was very disappointed in December, and so did Mr. Legault. He said he was disappointed to see the provisions for aluminum. So I'm tired of hearing them talk about 70% of aluminum. It's 70% of parts, and there's a distinction that needs to be made there. The impact study is clear. The new agreement compromises 60,000 jobs at 60,000 per year back home. At a time when we're fighting to keep people in the region, we're working hard to attract young families. Today, the Bloc has invited and is hosting workers from the region, the Mayor of Alma, the Saguenay, and others. So,
Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank workers in the aluminum sector. I visited the area a year ago. We removed the punitive tariffs, U.S. tariffs that had been imposed. We had those tariffs removed in our defense of aluminum, and I'm very happy that municipal representatives, leaders from the sector, came. They were also hosted by the Deputy Prime Minister. We will always work to protect and defend aluminum workers in Quebec.
The man charged with murdering Marilyn Levesque had killed his previous partner by beating her with a hammer and stabbing her in 2004. Last March, even though he was a significant risk to violently reoffend against women, the National Parole Board granted his parole and allowed him to have unsupervised contact with women in order to have his quote-unquote sexual needs met. How many other violent criminals have been advised by the parole board that their, quote, sexual needs are more important than the safety of women in our communities?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Obviously, Mr. Speaker, this is a terrible tragedy, and I will highlight that the decisions of the parole board are, of course, independent from government, but we all have questions about this case, and that's why we're pleased that Correctional Services and the parole board are launching a board of investigation inquiry into the circumstances that led to this terrible case.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, this week the Minister of Public Safety said that he had confidence in the parole board members. But how can anyone have confidence in a decision-making process made by officers that gave permission to obtain sexual services to someone who brutally murdered his spouse in 2004? There's a serious lack of judgment in a situation where commissioners are responding to the needs of a criminal instead of looking at potential consequences. When will the Prime Minister show them the door? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. With respect to the parole board, they use a merit-based process to find the best possible officers. This makes it possible to find people with a vast areas of knowledge in correctional services law, among other things. Members of the board make decisions once they've completed their training and once they have the confidence of the Vice President. We respect the confidence of the people who are appointed to those jobs.
Mr. Speaker, this government said it just had to give Omar Khadr $10 million to save on legal fees. This government also said it wouldn't take veterans to court. But this government is fighting Canadian veteran Sean Bruya in court, and now we've learned that they've spent over 7 times what he's seeking in damages. Wow. Why does this Prime Minister treat captured al-Qaeda bomb makers better than he treats Canadian veterans?
Yep. Great question.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, over the past 5 years, we have reversed the shameful legacy of conservative attacks on veterans. They cut over 1,000 jobs from Veterans Services Canada, shuttered 9 Veterans Affairs offices, and over the past years, we have invested in supports for our veterans, for their families, in making sure that they have the tools they can need to lead fulfilled and successful lives in Canada after their military service. We thank them deeply for their service and will continue to invest in the things that they need, unlike what the Conservative governments before.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
That was a terrible answer. This Prime Minister's personal political witch hunt against Vice Admiral Mark Norman cost taxpayers more than $1.4 million, and that's just for his government's legal fees. The Prime Minister politically interfered in an RCMP investigation by stating twice on TV that the Vice Admiral would be charged even before charges where the investigation was even complete. Now that Norman's name is cleared, does the Prime Minister believe that wasting $1.4 million to smear the Vice Admiral was good use of taxpayer money?
All Prime Minister.
I think it's important to remember where this file actually started. On the eve of the 2015 election, Conservatives decided to rush through a $500 million sole source project. We wanted to ensure that we do our own due diligence on this decision with a newly elected federal cabinet. The decision to suspend Vice Admiral Norman was taken independently by the Chief of the Defence Staff, and any accusations otherwise are simply absurd.
Member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, Volkswagen was caught lying about illegal levels of emissions. They pled guilty in the U.S. and paid a $20 billion fine. So why did Canada wait years before laying charges? We don't know. What we do know is that Liberal ministers started meeting with Volkswagen lobbyists, and it looks like this corporation that was found guilty of committing environmental fraud got a backroom deal. Yep. Mr. Speaker, we are facing a climate crisis. So why are the Liberals putting corporate profits ahead of Canadians and the planet?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, this investigation and all related prosecution matters and the judge's approval of the penalty was made independent of ministers' offices. The company paid an unprecedented fine in Canada as a result of the investigation, indeed 23 times greater than the highest federal environmental fine ever imposed. The Public Prosecution Service determines what charges can be sustained, and they have sole jurisdiction to pursue any prosecution, and the funds from the fine will go towards projects that protect our environment.
Member for Nunavut.
Mr. Speaker, we know that 7 out of 10 children in Nunavut go to school hungry. How shameful is that in a country like Canada? Since Nutrition North has started, food security has actually gotten worse in Nunavut. People in need struggle to get quality food and necessities. Nunavut's the only fly-in, fly-out territory, so in my riding, it's even worse. When will this government step up to make the program transparent and accountable to those in the North and start feeding our children.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize the extraordinary difficulties faced around food security in the North, particularly in Nunavut. I have myself visited many times and heard directly from community members who are challenged and struggling with the issue. We have made significant improvements to Nutrition North, but we know there is much more to do. We will continue to work with all partners and everyone in this House to ensure that we are improving affordability for good quality nutrition and food in the North.
Excellent. Well, member for Thunder Bay, Rainy River.
Mr. Speaker, through the National Housing Strategy, our government has made a real investment in Canadian communities in order to help to ensure that every Canadian has a place that they call home. This is no small thing, but the cost of rent is going up everywhere. So many Canadians believe there's never been a greater need for the federal government to play a leadership role in the housing sector. Would the Prime Minister please update us on what the government is doing to invest in affordable housing in Canada?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I'd like to begin by congratulating the member for Thunder Bay Rainy River for getting elected to represent his constituents in this House of Commons. We are proud to be introducing the Canada Housing Benefit as part of our national housing strategy. For the first time in Canadian history, Canadians will be provided with a direct, portable housing benefit that will help them find affordable places to call home. Hundreds of thousands of Canadians will receive an average of $2,500 a year to support their housing needs. This is good news for all Canadians.
Excellent. Excellent.
Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, according to this government's Global Affairs website, economic sanctions can encompass a wide variety of measures. They include financial restrictions, export and import restrictions, and shipping bans. They can even apply to specific economic sectors. So, Mr. Speaker, when is this Liberal Prime Minister going to lift the sanctions he's imposed on Alberta?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize that workers in the energy sector in Alberta and Saskatchewan has faced difficult years because of rising oil prices. We also know that we need to all work together to support those workers. This is something that Canadians are known for. When folks are facing difficult times in one corner of the country, we all step up for each other. That is what we're going to continue to do. That's why we're pleased that the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion is being built and will be delivering our oil resources to new markets, something Conservatives were unable to do for 10 years in government.
For Red Deer Mountain View.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal attack on the energy sector has had a devastating impact on the people, business owners, and social agencies in my city of Red Deer. That's right. It's gotten so bad, even the CBC has reported on it. Red Deer has worked so hard to contribute to our nation's prosperity. When will the Prime Minister take his foot off the throats of our oil and gas developers and recognize the harm that his anti-resource development policies are having on this great Alberta city?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we recognize the difficult times being gone through by families who depend on the Alberta and Saskatchewan oil sector for their livelihoods. Indeed, all Canadians know that we need to be there for each other in times of difficulty. The number one ask for many, many years from the oil sector has been to access new markets other than the United States for our oil and gas resources. That was something that 10 years of Conservative governments were unable to do. And now, with the approval and construction of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, we are finally able to help the folks in Alberta and Saskatchewan.
Honorable member from Montmagny-Listler, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, businesses in my riding and across Canada are already facing all kinds of recruitment problems, particularly the recruitment of seasonal workers. The situation is getting worse, and this year there have been totally unacceptable delays in launching the Canada Summer Jobs Program. Businesses are being told a solution's on the way. Our riding office is being told a solution's on the way. But can the Prime Minister give us a date as to when the program will actually officially be launched. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. January 30th, Mr. Speaker. We know how the Summer Jobs Program is important for communities, for young people in our ridings, and for community organizations. So we're happy to say that we will be continuing with that program and that we actually doubled the program after the Conservatives underinvested in our young people. We know how to help the community organizations that are working so hard for Canadians.
Maskey, Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, there is an environmental disaster in the District of Mission waiting to happen. Local engineers have confirmed that their aging sanitary sewer crossing under the Fraser River is at risk of imminent breach. Will the Prime Minister take action now to defuse this ticking time bomb and avoid an environmental catastrophe and provide immediate funding to safeguard our wild salmon and the thousands of people who depend on this critical infrastructure? Thank you.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as the grandson of a proud BC fisheries minister, I can tell you that the health of our wild salmon stocks on the West Coast are extremely important to me. I can assure you that our fisheries minister, as well as our partners in the provincial government of British Columbia, are working closely together to ensure the stability and growth of our salmon stocks that are so important for British Columbians and indeed for people right across the country.
The Honourable Member for Avignon-Lamitis Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, the moment of truth is upon us. The government can no longer claim to want to fight climate change and, at the same time, approve the Tech Frontier project. Tech Frontier represents 260,000 barrels of bitumen per day for 40 years. That's 4 million tons of CO2 per year, minimum. So much for the Paris Agreement targets. The government knows very well that Tech Frontier would end any hope to protect Canada's environment. Will the Prime Minister immediately and irrevocably say no to Tech Frontier? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I said during the election campaign, I want to reassure Canadians that we will meet our greenhouse gas emissions targets. In fact, we'll even exceed those targets. We're also committed to being having net zero emissions by 2050. This is something that is critical not only for protecting the environment, but also for ensuring economic growth. We know that creating good jobs and economic growth for communities across the country is essential if we want to protect the environment, and we will always do both of those things at once. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Well, Mr. Speaker, it's not by planting trees that you're going to meet those targets. Just yesterday, the government was calling on New Brunswick to abandon the Maritime Iron Project for fear that it would call into question the government's ability to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. And now we're asking for exactly the same thing with Tech Frontier, an Alberta project that's even more polluting. We're talking about a minimum of 4 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions every year for 40 years. I think that's the only environmental assessment that the Prime Minister should need to be able to make a decision, stand up, and put an end to this project. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we would rather look at the environmental assessments and take science into account when we make decisions. Unlike the member across the way, who apparently doesn't care about those environmental assessments. We make our decisions based on evidence and science. And I would also say that planting 2 billion trees will make a difference in the fight against climate change. And I'm disappointed that the member doesn't believe that that's an important strategy, because we know that protecting nature and conserving our forests is part of the solution.
Honourable Member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, we know the first 2 cases of the coronavirus detected in Canada were on flight CZ311, which had more than 100 passengers. The question is, and all Canadians deserve an answer, does the Prime Minister and the government know the location, and have they notified every passenger who was on that flight?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, that's an excellent question because indeed it is something we are absolutely following up on. We recognize that Canada, unlike many countries that Canadians visit, does not ask where someone's final destination is when they board a plane. But we are using data that we've collected, like a passenger manifest, to follow up, and I can assure you that we are in the process of ensuring a follow-up on everyone who is on that flight.
Member for Edmonton Riverbend.
Mr. Speaker, we now have 3 confirmed cases of the coronavirus here in Canada. Cases in China have jumped 65% in one day, and health officials have confirmed there will be more cases here in Canada. Other nations are stopping flights in and out of China and introducing more rigorous screening processes. Is the Prime Minister satisfied with the actions of his government?
Well, Prime Minister.
Obviously, Mr. Speaker, we take this situation very seriously, but I can reassure Canadians that the health risk to Canadians continues to be low. We are taking all necessary precautions to prevent the spread of infection. The best practices are in place across Canadian hospitals to isolate patients who are experiencing symptoms. Preventative measures are in place in airports in Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, and we continue to coordinate with the WHO, with our international partners, to ensure that we are doing everything necessary to keep Canadians safe.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, the number of coronavirus cases is increasing dramatically in China and around the world. There are 3 confirmed cases in Canada, and a number of Canadians are also under observation. Experts are now saying that this already exceeds the SARS epidemic. And an emergency committee has just been struck. Can the Prime Minister tell us if he is confident that the situation is under control, and is he satisfied with his government's response to this crisis? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Our health system is very well prepared to deal with such viruses in Canada. We're taking all necessary precautions to prevent the spread of the disease. We're working with our international partners, as well as Dr. Tam, who is at the head of our public health agency. He is working at the WHO to ensure that there is international coordination in response to this disease. We have preventive measures in place in hospitals and airports, and the risk to Canadians remains low. Our healthcare system is in place to prevent the spread of this disease. The Honourable Member for Alfred Pellan. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers are increasingly choosing to reduce their carbon footprint by buying zero-emission vehicles. In fact, between 2018 and 2019, the number of electric vehicles on Quebec roads increased by 71%. In my riding, nearly $1 million has been put toward the federal incentive that we set up last May. Can the Prime Minister inform the House of the incentives that exist to encourage Canadians to buy zero-emissions vehicles? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I want to thank the member for Alfred Pellan for his work and for bringing up this piece of good news. Indeed, last year, the government set up a purchasing incentive for zero-emission vehicles, an incentive worth up to $5,000. This is part of our plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and fight climate change. We will continue to set up other practical and affordable solutions to help all Canadians fight climate change.
Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Foreign Affairs responded to my order paper question on Canada's shocking vote against Israel at the United Nations with boilerplate deflection, which ignores the offensive implications of that vote. So again, does the Prime Minister actually know, does this Liberal government, with regard to Canada's vote of yes, actually now consider East Jerusalem, which contains the holiest site in Judaism, the Western Wall, as occupied Palestinian territory?
Wow. Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, this Liberal government remains committed to a goal of comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in the Middle East. That includes the creation of the Palestinian state, living side by side in peace and security with Israel that is secure within its own borders. We recognize the need to renew efforts towards a negotiated solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We've long maintained that peace can only be achieved through direct negotiation between the parties. We're always ready to support dialogue between the parties towards a negotiated and viable two-state solution.
For Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
Mr. Speaker, last week we learned that under this Prime Minister, Canada's fallen to a 10-year low on the Global Corruption Index. We know the Prime Minister was found guilty of breaking the Conflict of Interest Act. We know he used his office to circumvent, undermine, and discredit the Director of Public Prosecutions and the Attorney General. But we still don't have the full picture. The Prime Minister is engaged in a cover-up by blocking access to several witnesses. When will the Prime Minister put the reputation of this country first and end the cover-up?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Canadians expect their Prime Minister to stand up for jobs right across the country, and that is what I will do, and I will not apologize for that. We will do it in a way that respects the independence of our justice system. We will continue to ensure that Canadians can prosper, that we're creating jobs, as we've seen over the past 5 years, over 1 million new jobs created. We will stay focused on ensuring a better present and future for all Canadians.
Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, T-A-I-W-A-N. This is a question about Taiwan. The health and safety of Canadians depends on an effective, internationally coordinated response to coronavirus. Taiwan has identified 5 such cases. So, does the government support the inclusion of Taiwan in international discussions about the virus? Again, Taiwan, yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. As we did during the time of the SARS virus, we support Taiwan's meaningful participation especially when its presence provides important contributions to the global public good. We believe that Taiwan's role as an observer in World Health Assembly meetings is in the best interest of the international health community and also is an important partner in the fight.
If I could just interrupt the Honourable Prime Minister for a second. I'm having a hard time hearing the answer, and I'm sure everybody else wants to hear what the Right Honourable Prime Minister has to say. So I'll let him continue if he's got anything else to add.
We welcome participation from the entire international community to promote global health, and that is why we have long taken this position.
The Honourable Member for Brome-Missisquoi. Mr. Speaker, agriculture is a dynamic sector full of great opportunities. As we mark Bell's Let's Talk Day, it's important to remember that the agricultural sector is not immune from psychological distress. Farmers have to deal with increasingly unpredictable world markets and weather, and that uncertainty can weigh very heavily on them. There are a number of organizations, including Quebec's Au Cœur des Familles Agricoles and the Farm Stress Line in Saskatchewan, that are doing remarkable work to ensure the well-being of our farmers. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I want to thank the member for Brome-Missisquoi for her work and for her question. Mental health is a major issue, and we care very much about the well-being of farmers. It can be difficult for farmers experiencing psychological distress to confide in loved ones. We are providing support for a number of initiatives that raise awareness about mental health issues, and we're supporting research in order to better understand this situation. We want to ensure that farmers and their families know that there are resources available to help them through difficult times.
For Hamilton Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, workers in Regina and across the country are fighting corporations for their pensions. They shouldn't have to fight their government too. In the Ministers of Seniors mandate letter, it says only people over 75 will get an increase to the old age security pension. The Liberals, wealthy and well-connected friends will be fine, but most seniors between the ages of 65 and 75 will be left behind. Will the government agree to raise benefits for all seniors, or will they continue leaving certain seniors in need behind?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, over the past 5 years, we've made significant investments in our seniors. One of the first things we did was restore the age of retirement back to 65 from the 67 the Conservatives wanted to send it to. We then increased by 10% the guaranteed income supplement for our most vulnerable single seniors that kicks in as of 75. We made investments in housing, investments in affordable drug strategies. We continue to move forward in many different ways to support our seniors. But yes, indeed, we've also committed to raising the OAS for seniors over 75 because we recognize there are greater costs associated with living longer, which is a good thing for Canadians, but we will be there to help them.
And that's all the questions for today, and c'est la fin de la session.
That is the end of our questions.
For Vimy.
Mr. Speaker, in relation to my voting attendance Monday, I would like to reiterate that I was in the chamber and heard the question but was not in my seat when the vote started, which I now understand is the rule for a recorded vote. This was obviously an error as a new member of the House. As a result, please remove my vote from Monday's relevant vote count. Thank you.
I thank the honourable member for the clarification and accordingly direct the table to modify the results of the recorded division held on Monday and consider the matter now settled. Je profite de l'occasion.
I'd like to benefit from this opportunity to remind honourable members of the importance of recorded votes. The results of every vote reflects the opinion of the House and of its parties. It is therefore imperative that the voting process be done with the greatest integrity.